Hi, I'm Mima. I'm a grandma and a mom, and we are on chapter 3 of The Adventures of Sophie Mouse, a New Friend, by Poppy Green, illustrated by Jennifer A. Bell. So, the title of chapter 3 is School Surprise, and here's the picture. The next morning, dressed in her best jumper dress and leggings, Sophie hurried to get her backpack ready. She was eager to see friends she hadn't seen all winter. Plus, she thought, you never know exactly what will happen on the first day of school. Sophie zipped up her backpack. "Bye, Dad," Sophie called on as she hurried out the door. "Wait for me," Winston cried. He ran out after her, his shoelaces still untied. Sophie had almost forgotten. Winston was starting school this year. Mrs. Wise's one-room school, Silver Lake Elementary, was for all students ages 6 to 10. Sophie bent down to tie Winston's shoes. "Excuse me, Mrs. Wise will want you to learn to tie these yourself," she said firmly. Then in a gentler voice she added, "Come on, I'll show you the fun way to school." Instead of taking the path into the Pine Needle Grove, past the bakery, the library, and the post office, Sophie led Winston to a little-known trail. It cut behind the library and ran through a tunnel of honeysuckle branches. The flower buds were just opening. Sophie could hear Winston behind her, taking deep breaths of the scent. "It must smell really good." The trail came out in the schoolyard. Sophie led Winston up to the front door and inside the pine bough schoolhouse. "Sophie," Hattie's voice rang out. Sophie turned and waved. Hattie was standing with her big sister Liddy and their friend Ellie the squirrel. Just then, Piper the hummingbird and Zoe the bluebird flew in through the windows. Willie the toad was already sitting at a desk next to Malcolm the mole. And Ben the rabbit and his little brother James entered the room behind Sophie and Winston. Wow, look at all these students are already there. Winston knew James from preschool, so they went off to find 2 desks together, a mouse-sized one for Winston and a bigger one for James. Sophie headed over to say hello to Hattie, Liddy, and Ellie. But just then, Mrs. Wise, a neatly dressed owl with glasses, stood up at the front of the room. "Class," she said, "please take your seats." Sophie hurried to get a maple bark desk by a window so she could see outside. She loved looking out the window, even if Mrs. Wise did catch her daydreaming sometimes. "Welcome back to school," said Mrs. Wise when the students were seated. "I'm happy to see you all bright-eyed and ready to start another season." There's Mrs. Wise. "Now, I think we're all here," Mrs. Wise counted the students. "Oh, we're missing our new student. His family has just moved to Pine Needle Grove. His name is Owen. I know you will all make him feel very welcome." At that moment, the door creaked open. "Here he is now," said Mrs. Wise. "Welcome, Owen." All the students turned in their seats and gasped. Ellie and Malcolm both let out little squeaks. Ben's ears stood straight up. Sophie rubbed her eyes to make sure she was seeing this right. Owen was a snake? And that's the end of chapter 3. Wow, that's a surprise, isn't it? Okay, well, we'll come back again and read chapter 4. So I hope you'll check back later to see what happens in chapter 4. And just remember, I love you. See you next time. Come back soon.